Shalom, everybody. Welcome back to the Baal Sulam's Matan Torah with commentary by Rebbe Avraham Mordechai Gottlieb, who I'm referring to as the Rebbe Shlita. We are on page 113, section 21, at the top. The last class, we spoke more about the notion of tipping the scale for the entire world, either to the side of merit or demerit, by our actions, whether good or bad, meaning giving or receiving. So we're going to continue this topic. The header reads, when Rabbi Elazar states that each individual in the world is responsible for the whole world, he is referring to the situation when the people of the world become worthy of taking upon themselves the service of loving the other. The merit of each individual is seen as the amount that tipped the scale to the side of selfless love. The Baal HaSulam begins. This is the intent of the words of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, when he says, quote, the world is judged according to its majority. He is referring to the role of the Israeli nation to prepare the world to undergo a certain process of refinement until the people of the world become worthy of taking upon themselves the service of God to no less than an extent to which the people of Israel were worthy at the time they received the Torah. This level of refinement is considered in the language of our sages that they have attained the majority of merits, zchuyot, which we clarified in the last class. Zechut is merit, but it also can mean spiritual refinement, from the language of hizdachut, meaning to refine in Hebrew. So they attain the majority of merits, spiritual refinements, so that they outweigh the side of the merit, which is the contaminated self-love, the egoism, the will to receive for itself alone. He continues clearly, if the amount on the merit side of the scale, which represents the higher comprehension of the nature of loving the other, is large and is greater than the amount on the side of the contaminated demerit, then the people with such merit are prepared to make the decision and give their assent by saying, quote, we will do and we will hear. Nasiv v'nishma. As Israel said when they received the Torah. But before that, before they obtain a majority of virtues, self-love certainly prevails and determines that they refuse to accept the yoke of service of God. As we've spoken about Israel, the nation of Israel, the Jewish people are to be like a big sibling to the other nations of the world. We were given the Torah so that we can refine ourselves through all of its details and mechanisms, so that we can be the example and build a solid society based on its principles of Yehavta l'recha kamocha, loving the other as oneself. And once we could accomplish this, the whole world will follow suit and will be, as we stated, a segula, a treasured nation of priests, as is our inheritance. Priest, the Kohanim, they taught Torah. They were on very high levels, highest we say in our tradition, being the Kohanim, the Levites, and the rest of Klal Yisrael. But they're also in service because they're exemplifying chesed. They're exemplifying giving and the Creator's qualities to the world, that being all of Klal Yisrael is supposed to be like that, but they're also in service. They're also serving Klal Yisrael. So to us being the priests of the world, the Kohanim of the Olam is meaning to say that we are to serve the world. We're supposed to be giving to give. We're supposed to be altruistic. So we're supposed to serve the other. There might be these ideas otherwise that others might serve us. Or in the time to come, post the Mashiach, when the Redeemer has arrived and the whole world has changed, the New World Order has come. A New World Order of giving and loving and following the Torah in its deepest aspects. Then we'll be on top. You can say that we'll be on top relative to the quality that we're displaying, because what is above in importance is giving, and what's below in importance is receiving. So we would be on the top, assuming we achieve such a level and are able to exemplify it, surely. But that's not to say that we're more important than anyone else. And we'll get into that more in the next lesson. For the time being, let's continue. The Rabbi Shita says, on the notion of loving the other, I'll read inside again the second paragraph of what we just read, and I'll go into the commentary. Clearly, if the amount on the merit side of the scale, which represents the higher comprehension of the nature of loving the other, is large and is greater than the amount on the side of the contaminated merit, then the people with such merit are prepared to make the decision and give their asset by saying, Naseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear, as Israel said. But before that, before they obtain a majority of virtues, self-love certainly prevails and determines that they refuse to accept the yoke of the service of God. The Rabbi Shlita says, the understanding referred to here is not external, but rather an internal understanding, where we sense from our own central point of inner truth that loving the other is the true principle of life. Only this principle can move us forward toward attachment to God and eternity. And we need to apply it both to our individual selves and also to our society. Easier said than done, slowly but surely. To consider the state of the world and the difficulties that it is experiencing, the fears and doubts and uncertainty that are rampant, especially in this generation of Corona and the like. How much more so do we need these ideas, and to prioritize them and focus them, and to be ingrained and involved in them more so than the other matters that would veer us from Kedusha, holiness. Holiness, of course, meaning something sanctified, something separate, something distinct, being giving. Because naturally we receive. So to contemplate the status of the world, being that there's generally two parameters that the world can abide by. Path of Torah being the path of light, or the path of suffering. Clearly we're in the path of suffering. It's a bitter thing to acknowledge, but it's all for the best, whatever the situation is. The Creator is always involved at every microsecond, willing reality into being, providing us with every scenario, only in order to give goodness to us. So all the suffering we experience is because we're not bringing suffering upon ourselves. Sounds a little strange, but I'll clarify that at the end of the class. The Baal Sulam continues, and this is what our sages intended when they said in Masechet Kedushin, the Talmud, page 40b, whoever does a single commandment is blissful for having tipped the scale to the side of merit for himself or herself and for the whole world. That is, in the final accounting, when the world will be judged to be on the side of merit, the portion of merit of an individual member of Israel is included as the amount that tips the scale. Similarly, when weighing sesame seeds, one can add one seed at a time to one side of the scale until the point where it outweighs the other side. Here, each seed surely provides a measure towards the tilting of the scale. And without that seed, the scale would have remained balanced. So this saying of the sages states that in the same manner as the sesame seeds, a single act of an individual member of Israel tilts the scale for the whole world to the side of merit. No matter how small the action, whether it be an act of kindness towards fellow man or towards the Creator by following his ways, whether it be the body of Jewish law, halacha, or the like. Even if it's considered a tiny sesame seed, that's all it takes to literally tip the scale. Considering it's all one scale and it's all in one world, because we're trying to get back to the point of being one man with one heart, as we were at the time of Matan Torah, receiving the Torah. So too, the power of each and every beautiful soul. The Baal HaTzilum continues, when all is over and the scale that measures the whole world tips the side of merit, then each individual will have had a part in the deciding weight. And without this part, there would not have been the final reckoning. Thus, you find that Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, does not dispute the words of our sages that all of Israel are guarantors for one another, as we're learning here the extension of the Matan Torah essay, Ha'arvut, the mutual guarantee. Because I can tip the side to merit or demerit, surely we're all guarantors for each other, because we're all capable of adding strength and support to steer the ship in the right direction or shoot a hole in the bottom for all to drown in. Thus, you find that Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, does not dispute the words of our sages that all of Israel are guarantors for one another. Rather, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, speaks of the future correction of the whole world, whereas our sages speak of the present, when only Israel has accepted the Torah. The Red Shita says, the world is judged according to the majority, and the Holy One created an entire world. You can't claim that only Jews are in the world, that they will merit to reach complete perfection, that they will attain the state of clinging to God and connection with Him, and that other peoples are like dust in the wind, with no beginning and no purpose in the end. The Holy One created the world in its entirety, so that every person would come to take part in the service of God. The global service of God is gradual, just as an individual spiritual growth is gradual. We must daily train ourselves to have consideration for other people and for God. Little by little, we conquer a part of ourselves and then another part. And certainly the process is a gradual one, also for humanity as a whole. I would like to hone in on the word conquer. Really it's a nation conquering another nation, because as the Torah describes, there's Klal Yisrael, it's the nation of Israel, and then there's the 70 nations of the world, 70 other languages, which pertain to the 70 aspects of the desire to receive for oneself alone within us. So our innermost point of Yisrael, Yashar Keil, straight to God, being Lishma, our actions being for the sake of heaven, being giving. This quality is to convert, so to speak, and conquer the other nations within, meaning our giving should be conquering our receiving. To put it simply. So too, in the story of the Torah, before the nation of Israel came and conquered the land, there was the Canaanite nations that ruled prior. That story, and the Torah, is not a storybook, at least not just a storybook, is meaning to describe the spiritual principle that before we have a geula, before we have redemption, we need galus, exile. So too, before we can reach the most exalted state, we need to conquer that which is in the way. Before we got to our inheritance, that is the land of Israel, we had to conquer those Canaanite nations, which alludes to the necessity of conquering the will to receive for oneself alone within us prior to reaching the state of Lishma, of being L'Shem Shamayim, Yashar Keil, straight to God. But we see here that it's for everyone, not just Israel. We're first, relatively speaking, in this journey, because we're supposed to be the example, but it's for everyone. The Rabbi Shita continues, this vision seems like a dream, even with regard to the nation of Israel. When will the time arrive in which everyone will long to cling to God and follow the path of giving and faith? The basic truth is that each of us must focus on healing himself or herself and thereby hasten the process toward the general redemption. As the famous quote says, if you want to change the world, change yourself. We're just clarifying here that the change is to come to that exalted state of giving. However, we must realize that everything is dependent on the will of God, and He determines the length of time it will take. We see that when we are in distress, we search for the true meaning of our lives and stop dealing with nonsense. This is called the way of afflictions, by means of which God shortens the time of a person's development. And a similar process must take place for the world as a whole. Again, there's two aspects. There's the path or the way of afflictions, and there's the path or way of the Torah. The truth is, the bitter truth is that regardless of what path you're on, there's great pain. But I heard my rabbi from yeshiva, Rabbi Siegel, Shlita, I remember he would say, pain is not bad. Pain is just pain. Meaning to say it's a necessary prerequisite to growing. Understandably so. Pushes us from the back. It forces us to change our scenario because we don't like to be in pain. So we make moves. We progress. The reason why the path of Torah is also, relatively speaking, a path of pain is because when we are enlightened by the light within the Torah, when we learn and do mitzvot with the intention to fix ourselves, have more emunah, have more faith in the Creator, and to develop love for the other. When we do this, the light that shines within us through these actions shines a light upon the evil within, and then we recognize it. This recognition can be very painful. It should be ideally, and that pain should constitute a reaction. It should be a catalyst for us to seek help from the Creator, from our mentors, to cry out, literally, to cry out, because the sages say, at least after the fall of the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, that the only gate that's open for all generations to come until the Mashiach is the gates of tears. That's the only way. To truly come to the higher state, we need to cry, literally cry, from the depths of our heart, true prayer, true tears that can only come through the great pain of the self-awareness of being a pure egoist, which the Creator only reveals to us slowly but surely through our progression. So the sages tell us that when we judge ourselves here, we save ourselves judgment above, because everything is accounted for and the spiritual system is exacting. So there's always something being written in the books, so to speak, of our actions and intentions. So if we judge ourselves here, recognize this evil, reflect on it, and do our best to make a change and request for help to make that change, we save ourselves the judgments from above that we would normally experience in the path of suffering. Which is why I said we should be bringing pain upon ourselves, meaning to say the awareness of the evil, the acknowledgement, the cheshbon nefesh, and the soul accounting, to go through one's day and check where we're holding, to say, was I really giving there? Was I really loving? Did I really care? Was it really just for me? So on and so forth. Both paths, being directly from the Creator, as any path, is to get us to connect to Him. Because that's what life's about. What is life? To connect to the life of all lives. To have dveikut, similarity of form. Just as He is compassionate, so too we must be. We must reach this point of Yihavta l'orecha kamocha, loving the neighbor as ourselves. When we're in the path of Torah, and we bring the pain upon ourselves via the self-criticism and the self-judgment, which should be for a maximum of 30 minutes a day, as the Baal Shem says, and we should only do that from a side of already feeling a state of relative perfection. I think it's important to refrain and clarify the right, left, and middle line as we talk about this. The right line is what we should spend 23 and a half hours a day in. That's shleimus, completion, meaning to say, I'm happy with my portion. Everything I have is perfect. This is exactly what the Creator wants of me in this moment. And He's perfect. He created me, so I must be perfect. All is well. To be besimcha, to be happy with all that one has, to be happy in the moment, to have faith that all will be well and all is well. And this is the best case scenario at this very moment. Only from that consciousness should we go into the left. If we're neutral, so to speak, and we go into the left, then we're susceptible to depression, anxiety, and things of that nature. God forbid. And then, when we notice this evil, when we see that ego within and experience that pain, we're happy about it because it's a great salvation. You can't fix what you can't see. You need to notice the problem in order to fix it. So, all recognition of evil should ideally make us dance. We should be very happy. So from right, feeling perfection, then seeing the truth of our ego, and then being happy with seeing the truth is kind of going back here. And in essence, that's what the middle line is. That's walking the middle line. And it's a bitter idea, but the Baal Shem says that even if someone is one degree off the road, assuming they don't have the guidance and they're not walking the path of truth, then as opposed to being Yashar Kel and getting to the Creator and finishing the job in this lifetime and making one's tikkun, making one's correction, they're going to veer because that 1% eventually turns into something totally out of the way. So the path of Torah, of course, is an even quicker assistance for us. So we must judge ourselves besimcha in order to come to this exalted state. I've heard the Rebbe Shita say recently that this should be understood, but it's not always so simple. That loving your neighbor as yourself starts at home. And then from there, friends, community, town, state, country, world. Tov, I'll just check if anyone's tuned in to the live stream in case there's any questions. Not that I see. Tov, thank you so much for watching, listening. Till next time, all the best.